some time back, you asked?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so I'm going to use it as an invocation for us today, and I'll translate it. And then sometime soon, we're all going to learn it. And we're going to sing it.
Yeah, it's right.
Rex can sing. It's called, it's called Pūrākau. Te ara I whanatu aira, pūrākau e tū mai nei, e piki ki runga kia marama ahau. Kei raro ko te matau a Māui, te whakatikangaki ki runga rā, ka titiwha te rehutai, te ara I whanatu aira. Ko te kura ki ahau, he tohu noake ki te kura I te rehutai. Te whakapiti o te rā, te whakaai o whenua, hoki muri mai au ki te iwi, te ara I whanatu aira. On the path most travelled, behold the grove of trees. I ascend so that I may see clearly. Below is te matau. And as I arise to go forth, a light shines through the sea spray upon the path of the myriads. I retain this plume as a symbol of the legacy beyond the spray of the sea, causing the sun to shine and spreading peace over the land. I now return to the people upon the trodden path.
Wow.
The meaning, this waiata highlights the legacy of our loved ones gone, the legacy that sees health return to our beautiful environment, te matawa Māui. This waiata takes us on a journey as we ascend above the trees, taking in the Hawke's Bay panorama. The kura is a metaphor for the work that we have yet to fulfil. Composed by Tuirina Wehi.
Wow.
So in time we'll learn that, but it's one composed specifically for us. E te tiamana, me ki rai a tātou e puhe nei, te hau ua hea nei, te ua e whitia nei te rangi, a tēnei te mihi kia tātou. Greetings to us all assembled. Kia tika ai, kia mihi ki tēnā era, i takahia te arawhānau e tāne ki te wāhia kore oki mai. Mihi also to those in the last couple of weeks. There have been many mate across the different marae, so it's a sign of respect to them. Ka mihi kātangi. Hoki mai rā kia tātou te kanohi ora. Coming back to us the living, e te tiamana and to the chair. Thank you for this opportunity. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Patty. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any notices? We not. We have some apologies. We have apologies from Joanella, Rick, and Tanya. It's Tanya Hopkins. Do we have any other apologies? We have none. So I would just like to, if we can record, yeah, I got Joanella. I'd just like to record the people that we've got on Zoom.
Yep.
So they're recorded differently.
Yep.
And record the fact that they have full voting rights. That's correct, James?
Yep.
Yes.
And we have a quorum. We do have a quorum?
Yep.
We're just waiting for Nikki to
Oh,
phone in.
Nikki's
She's
coming in.
gonna-
We don't have a quorum quite yet until Nikki comes up. But she says she's going to come in.
Just have a discussion, we just can't resolve anything.
Yeah, no. I'll still go through it. Are there any conflict of interests as pertaining to the day? There are none. Thank you. We'll confirm the minutes when we have the quorum. So we will go into the substantive issue that we are discussing today, which is very importantly selecting our commissioners for Plan Change 7. So, I'm not sure how we should proceed because obviously there's a long list of very capable people, but I understand Tana, we've had a meeting with.
We have. Yeah. We have.
Would you like to report on your meeting?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. We did meet last week, perhaps, maybe the week before, and discuss this item in particular. And what was determined, a couple of things, is that we wanted to propose that Tania Huata join the list of commissioners. And the thinking behind that is that there ought to be some training component and opportunity for new commissioners who've recently qualified to join and experience the process. Without being appointed, they don't actually get the opportunity to to be commissioners, so, and develop their skill sets. So that was the first
So you want Tania's name on this list?
to be added,
to be-
and
As one of the discussion options.
I understood that her CV was going to be circulated. I'm not sure if that happened. Did that happen? It did? And the other was that there be, in terms of numbers, to accommodate the training component, that there be 4 or 5, depending on the committee's wish that there be an odd number. If there doesn't need to be an odd number, then 4 to accommodate a commissioner in training.
Or an extra one, there's
Or an
6.
extra one,
Yeah, so
or
it's
5.
7 or 5. Yeah, okay.
At the moment, it's 3 being recommended, is it? Yeah. So either 4 or 5.
And did you have any other recommendations from this list?
We weren't, yes, and I'm just trying to remind me, Peter. I think we were going with, we were comfortable with Dr. Brent Cowie to chair, but we were suggesting Christine Scott, Dr. Marker, and Tania Huata.
So you had 4, 5.
For Glenys Payne was not necessarily.
Your choices were Tania,
Dr. Marker,
Roger.
yes,
yeah,
and Dr. Brent Cowie.
Brent Cowley, 3. Oh, Christine, you said.
Christine Scott,
Yeah.
yes.
So they were your,
And those were largely because of the local knowledge.
5. Okay, so we have, currently, we have staff recommendation for 6, and I think
Okay.
Charlie was really interested in getting staff's view on why they made those recommendations. You're not listening to me, Charlie.
Sorry, I'm just checking the, so if I might just clarify, there was an alternative recommendation that was circulated by Gavin. Ricky Ellison had provided him with the
I see.
Tangata input. And if I'm correct, it was actually only 3 commissioners were presented, Christine Scott being the chair, Roger Marker and Tania Huata, and that the reserves would be Glenys Payne, Liz Palmer and Dr. Brent Cowie.
That was, oh, so
That's the late item, yeah.
Yeah, so Chair, perhaps just in addition to that,
See if,
That's okay.
did you receive that, Annalie? Did you bring that up?
so look, I just suggest that what the committee might want to weigh up here is cost.
No, that-
So with the hourly rate and the services will be provided on an hourly rate, there could be a reasonably extensive hearing period. So and I guess in light of the Council's current financial situation, it's worth just being mindful of costs on all things as we are. And so if we went with 3 with those reserves, then this will cost some tens of thousands of dollars less than if we go for 5 commissioners. So
staff recommendation is 6.
No, it's 3.
no, it's 3.
Oh, 3 plus
The others are reserves.
3 plus the
3 plus
reserves.
reserves.
So it's either 3
Yeah.
plus the reserves, or you go for 5, or you just stick with 3. So it's a bit of a halfway house, which is you've got some people in reserve without going to the full 5, and we wouldn't recommend going to 4. So you've got so you do have a majority and even numbers.
So Charlie had a point, a good point. So you've got these names here, these 3, and then you've got your reserves. Can staff tell us why they went for those 3?
It really came down to looking at the expertise across the panel. And so going with, I think there was 4 areas of expertise that would be desirable for a hearing panel, which is up there. And so we went through and highlighted the 3 that had the most experience. Like it was the recommendations from staff is that it's quite highly experienced.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have 3 or 4 of those areas of expertise. So it would be a good panel to have to consider the plan change.
Unfortunately, they can't see that. Because, Annalie, could you swap out the screen, please? Just back to the PowerPoint.
Sorry.
So they're the areas of expertise that would be looking for. And then it's not highlighted here, but I think in the agenda item it is. And so you see that Dr. Roger Marker has 4 of the 4 key areas of expertise. And then going down, I think it was Brent Cowie has 3 of the 4. And Glennis also had 3 of the 4. And then in terms of reserves, you want some people that can, you can have more reserves, but you'd want to be ensuring that if one dropped out, that you could replace that with a person who had that area of expertise. So they
Are
could
the
slot
reserves
in.
paid while they're in waiting?
Sorry?
Are the reserves paid
No,
while they're in waiting?
no, it was
They're
just
only
if,
paid if they're there.
yeah. So the reserves will only come in if, say, a panel member gets sick or they have another work commitment. So we've contacted everybody on that list, but that was back in March, and they're all keen to be involved. But we don't know, it's now August or almost August, whether they've got other work commitments or family commitments, and they might not be able to do it.
And that was also the reason for the strikeouts within the table in your paper, was because those people had since indicated that they were unavailable.
Can I ask a series of questions?
Yes, certainly, Martin. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I just want to back the truck up and just make sure that I understand this plan change. My understanding is that it identifies water bodies as outstanding but doesn't have policy associated with that, or am I wrong?
It has, that's right, but it has a lot of policy that goes into the regional policy statement. So it's not in the regional plan section. So it provides a direction for the future plan changes, such as tank that's coming through, that there must be provisions or rules developed that protect those outstanding features. So it is, it's not.
It is both policy
It
and...
is both. And the majority of the submissions have been on the policy side of things, and the relationship with the parent documents, because it brings in not only the NPSFM, but also the coastal policy statement, and that aligns to the estuaries, and then obviously you have your freshwater bodies.
So it matters. And the other point about that is it would bring in the protection imperatives of the National Policy Statement for outstanding water bodies.
That's right.
And presumably the policy content, apologies I haven't read it as yet, would reflect that protective directive of the NPS in terms of what goes into the RPS. So if these bodies are designated as outstanding, and there's quite a number of them, aren't there?
38.
38.
Yeah, I had 42 in my head for some reason. So it's important we get this right. The question I had arising out of that, the prior deeper question I had is an understanding, I've got no agenda here by the way, is an understanding of why we're appointing an independent panel of commissioners as opposed to having members of the RPC who are qualified accredited commissioners, including councillors, appointed to hear this. Presumably this will be the same setup for tank, so just remind us of the logic around that, because I read the Appendix 2 to the paper and I couldn't see any reasons why elected members or RPC members wouldn't themselves be on this panel.
Kerry might like to add to this, but yeah.
There's nothing stopping us from having accredited councillors or tangata whenua representatives on the panel, but as Belinda's quite clearly outlined in her paper within the section on conflict of interest, we would need to apply an extra degree of care in doing so, so that we don't get to a position where when the panel comes to make decisions, there's a conflict and we're just not able to progress the plan change itself. So it doesn't discount you from being considered, but as Belinda's identified, there were some criteria that we used to sort of, what do you call it? Shortlist, thank you, I couldn't think of the word. Shortlist appropriate candidates, and your name would have been on that list because this was taken from the, the list that is held with MFA. I'll get there.
And a lot around it, and has driven it in terms of the policy experience. You want a panel that has a very, very high experience in policy development.
That's fine. Okay, that's good. So it's really just a clean sheet on conflicts and the high level of experience available within an independent body. No disrespect to us. And then before we get to, I do have 2 or 3 other questions I just wanted to ask. In terms of the availability aside, I was curious as to why, looking at experience, for example, Greg Ryder didn't make the cut. He seems to be very experienced as a commissioner, including in a number of cases dealing with marine outfalls and marine farming where outstanding landscape issues would have been in play. And I was curious, for example, why he wouldn't have been in the list of reserves, at least ahead of, say, Liz Palmer. And then the other one was Roru Tukituki, who sat with me and Christine Scott, as it happens, and Roger Marker, I believe, on the Napier City outfall. So he seemed to be quite another strong candidate. So any thinking there?
So when we went through those, we did look at those who had quite a bit of experience on the resource consent side of things.
Right.
And so he was quite strong, especially Greg Ryder was quite strong in that.
Consent,
but the
okay.
policy development in the RMA context, he didn't seem to have a lot, and so that's why those other 3 got put up ahead of him.
And Rodu Tukituki?
Again, it just came down to that Glenys had met 3 of those 4 of those key expertise areas. It's nothing against them, and they would probably be really good, and they could go onto the reserve list. It's just that those 3 really jumped out as in, look, wow, they've got the full package of almost everything.
Thank you. That's me. Thank you.
Neil?
Just a question going back to, if you like, the clean slate of candidates. Are there any consequences for the alternative? That is, how challengeable a decision made is to the decision making of the panel should they come to a decision that people might want to contest? Was that a consideration in terms of the selection, if you like, unconflicted candidates?
No,
So-
you go.
So, sorry if I'm just understanding your question. So if you have a panel that is
Well, how much
Unconflicted?
exposure do their decisions have based on the composition of the panel? Is there any case law, or what's if someone chooses to challenge the decision? What is the exposure based on the composition of the panel?
I'm not aware of any case law, but that's not to say that there isn't necessarily any out there. I think in terms of if there was a conflict that would ordinarily be raised during the proceedings, and so, for instance, if you were on the panel and somebody had highlighted that you were the neighbour of a submitter, the judgment would be within that panel, would you be able to be involved in making those decisions? If there was felt to be a conflict, whether perceived or not, and the panel determined that it would be best for you not to be part of that decision making, that is definitely an option. So you try and minimise the conflict, try and reduce the impact of that conflict. If it was deemed to be a significant conflict, then that panel member may have to step out of the proceedings altogether, which has happened previously with Mike, as an example. So that's when you would then look to bring in a reserve person. So there are steps that you would put in place prior to it sort of blowing up at the end. You wouldn't. Well, you would assume that the chair would be competent enough and capable enough to make a clear decision around that and avoid that situation. But I'm sorry, I'm not aware of case law specifically.
Craig?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just speaking of conflicts, then I just probably should note that then I'm slightly well, I'll just declare a conflict in that I do know some of these people themselves, obviously. I know Mr. Marker, Dr. Marker, I know Christine Scott. I've had an association with Mr. Farnsworth, I know Ms. Huata, and I possibly know one or two of the others. It's just putting that out there. You know, it's good to have that out in the open. But can you, as you were replying to Councillor Williams, Mr. Farnsworth, who I have had an engagement with, I do value very highly, so I was interested in that description as to why you dropped him down the line a wee bit there. My point is my enthusiasm for him is obviously his many years of experience, etc., but his absolute independence from things Hawke's Bay, just neutral eyes from afar with the far north, and how much weight you put into that, balanced out with everyone else's, you know, our natural passion for our region. And basically, it's just having that considered, uncontestable decision coming out of the learned people who may present.
So it wasn't identified as a key area that we were looking for, but there's obviously room for changing the recommendations that staff have made, and there is value, like you say, in fresh pair of eyes, absolutely not related to any of the water bodies, independent, coming onto the panel. So there could be value in that, yeah.
But some of these people, two of these people are outside the region.
He's not the only one like that, but it just didn't seem to be a criteria.
No, it wasn't a criteria considered. I think value-wise, in terms of someone who knows the region, 38 water bodies have been identified. I think that value is good to have. I guess you just have to weigh it all up and figure out what you want and what expertise you want across the panel, and that was identified with the 4 ones that we pulled out. If you think fresh pair of eyes or you value him, then put him forward. I too have heard very good things about him, but they're all really strong as well. So at some stage you have to
It's nothing against the other candidates whatsoever, but also the point being the criteria under which you evaluated started to dictate the outcome. And look, you know, that's always going to be the case, but it's, to me, let's say we settle with 3 commissioners and the reserve bench there, it's very important. That's why we have 3, so there's not a split decision. And to balance it out, and again, it's you can argue the toss both ways. I understand that, but someone could also argue that having, you know, a lot of knowledge of 38 of the outstanding waterways is very important. Someone else will argue, yes, but the objectivity under law, remember, which was what's going to happen here, is very what's crucially important actually. So I when it comes to us A, having a quorum, and B, coming to that point, I will be putting him forward as one of our reserves, just to rest on what I've just said.
Yeah.
And I
You're
think
gonna have different
that's why
people.
we've
I
included
think we
more
talked about
CVs
him.
than just our staff recommendation, because, you know, we are aware that there are people outside of those 6 that have, you know, a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
If you looked at all of the people who are accredited commissioners on the MFE list, it is much larger. So this is kind of a long short list, if you like.
Sure.
So we've allowed that, you know, the extra CVs to be available to you, so you can consider alternatives if you so wish.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and but I can only go off the documents I've been given, of which have a recommendation. So if I put someone up, I'm countering your recommendation as opposed to, council, here's a blank slot. It's a slightly different starting point.
Which is what we've received from the Tangata Whenua representatives.
Exactly. Yeah, you have. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly, Charles.
Yeah, so you've also got your top three there that you've recommended, and you've got 3 reserves, but they actually look as though you're identified them to be the obvious replacement for if anyone else has to pull out for example, that Christine Scott as a chair certificate would probably take Brett Cowie's place.
That's right, that's
Is that how you're
correct.
doing it?
Yes.
Liz Palmer would probably take Roger Marker's place.
That's that we were attempting to do. Just if someone, say Brent pulled out and then you didn't have a chair in your reserves, then we'd have to swing back round and come back to the RPC with a new paper.
Yep, and so we haven't got any councillors on there or any RPC members because of possible conflict.
Right.
Because we then look at, like Liz's, your list, you got Tanya on there, she's now a member of the RPC.
Very good summing up, Charlie.
It was.
Would that affect your list?
That
Possibly.
affect my list. I think the fact that,
She was going to be the trainee if we had a trainee position.
I think tangata whenua bring an added element that is not actually discounted in this process.
No, but that's why Liz is the other way.
But
Palmer, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see why you put Liz, because she understands the Wairau Hawke's Bay setup. Yep. She's not in the RPC,
So, Mr. Chair.
Charlie, just, oh, Mike.
Yeah. So, as far as the original people that the Māori Regional Planning Committee, tangata whenua, put up, in putting up Tania, it was because of her interest. She notified us of her interest. One of the problems with Māori people doing the Making Decisions course and then becoming accredited is that there is the perception that you will immediately be on a hearing panel. Now, it's 15 years since I first did the course, and still qualified, because every 5 years you've got to do another one. That's the problem with that perception is actually incorrect, because there's so many Māori now that have done the course. And what it should be emphasised is by doing the course, you are more aware of the process in the RMA, rather than the fact that you will naturally be a hearing commissioner. I think it would be good, and taking Tamatea, you've got Brian Gregory, ex-Māori committee member, Roger Marker and myself. Now, the average age for those three, including myself, is actually 75 years of age. When do Māori get the next generation up qualified in terms of experience with these hearings? Perhaps this is not the hearing to do that. We may be better, we as the Regional Planning Committee with both councillors and tangata whenua reps, might be better saying to Napier, in fact to all the other councils, when you have a hearing, can we put somebody in there for training? Because I suspect that this and the tank process, you'd be dropping somebody there who hasn't done a hearing before. They would be completely lost. And going right back to my first hearing with Christine Scott, I was like a naughty schoolboy sitting in the corner because it was right over my head, and it was a comparatively easy hearing. It's extremely difficult, but how do we get the next generation of Māori with some experience in hearings?
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just make a comment there? There was never a perception that as soon as I became an independent commissioner, I would automatically go on a panel. And you've got my CV, where I state that I'm passionate about our environmental issues. I've put in submissions, so I just want to make it clear there was never a assumption that I would have automatically gone on a panel. The other thing is that I'm saying, so I done my what do you call it? I done my first course. I've been an independent commissioner for so many years, and then I went for my chair endorsement. So I'm going to say again, there was never any perception that I was automatically going to go on a panel. But what I do want to say is that how can I be given the opportunity if nobody's going to allow it? I would assume I've heard the talk where you've got two other members. Now, I'm assuming they've got the qualifications and the skills to guide me. So I didn't know I was going to be a cadet type person. I was going to go there to get the experience so that I can further pursue my passion, which is environmental issues. So I just want to correct the last speaker there. Yeah.
Just in my defence, I did say generically.
Thank you, Tony. I think we understand that. Thanks for that. So, are we back to this staff recommendation? What are people?
Well, as I noted, Mr Chair, when we have a quorum, I'll be looking to substitute one of those names with Mr Farnsworth, a 3 and 3. I don't even know if we've settled on that, so I presume we have, and then I'll be looking to put him in the 1, 2, 3, number 5, to substitute number 5. But again, we don't have a, do we have a quorum?
Is Nikki here?
Nikki is online, yes.
She's online. Nikki, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh,
I've been here for a little while.
Thank you, Nikki. How's Waikamoana?
Very, very cold, not so wet today, but I'm in Wairoa at the moment.
Ah, gee.
Sorry, Mr Chair, I meant to ask this earlier, just given what I just said. I would be looking to move to substitute Ms Palmer for Mr Farnsworth. Can you just tell us why the experience of Ms Palmer in plan changes and policy changes?
I think if you would lose the tikanga Māori aspect if you did substitute Liz with Mr Farnsworth.
With which Roger holds.
That's right. It was So that's still there as an expertise on the panel if you did.
Liz Waddle.
Yeah, from the reserve bench.
She's nominated by Tato Tato, and yes, she is Waidel. Fiercely Waidel.
Fiercely Waddle. Okay. Do you want to put that up? Do you still want to continue on that?
With Chelsea, I might change it to Mr Cowie.
Do you want to put that up formally, that we make that change after listening to staff?
Yeah, I would, with absolute due respect for the other people there, but just given the independence argument that I make, I would be looking to put him forward as one of the substitutes. I'd be guided by you. At the moment, I just saw the middle substitute there, but I don't know if that's prioritised or that's 1 for 1 or what. It's not against anybody, it's just for the independence of this person.
I think the first decision we need to make is, are we happy with 3?
Yes.
Rather than 5, rather than 7? So, Liz, are you happy with 3?
My preference in terms of the training element would be 5.
Then we probably need a...
It's not really training, it's the experience that she's saying. Which would then allow for the addition.
At our workshop, we took it that council had put up 3. We were going to put up 3. They gave us a 6. We would then be having a talk. We got the tank that we're going through. It is in our patch. The river's over the whole of our Kahununga area, and we didn't really seem to see our influence in there. While we might be half of this committee, it seemed to be heavily stacked to experts that were well out of the area, who wouldn't even know where to go and catch a tuna, where to go and get kai, that we go and get out of our rivers that we're trying to protect. And that what we saw in the paper this morning was not very nice.
Yes.
That was Tukituki. So that's how we came away from that. So we took it that all 6 would be put on the table and we'll have a real good look at it. But without being able to get back to the group and make this comparison, we've had some great people pass through on different hearings that we've had here. And I didn't see very many of their names. Oh, sorry, they were turned down. They took a low rating. I won't name them. So, kia ora, I don't know where we're going to go.
We even, and dare I say it, we went as far as saying that Dr. Marker is sitting on every panel and he's likely to get appointed, or definitely proposed, for the tank plan change. So if there was to be a choice, then we would prefer Tania to step in there and onto this item rather than Dr. Marker, with absolutely no disrespect, in fact the greatest respect shown to Dr. Marker. He can't, you know, we're that limited on people with capacity or capability to sit on these panels that we've actually got to start somewhere, and of the two.
Madam Chair, can I speak to the topic of, I personally think any more than 3 is unwieldy and unworkable.
Mm-hmm.
I think an even number is fraught for obvious reasons of a split decision and putting a chair into some sort of casting role. Which, the Environment Court sits with 3, and if it's good enough for the Environment Court, why not for Council? It's difficult enough working through deliberations on such an extensive, you know, you've got a month of hearings or whatever. Trying to get 5 people lined up with a decision would be, to me, verging on shambolic. This shouldn't be a numbers game, and with respect, Peter, the issue here is not stacking the panel with people that we like or prefer or share our values or whatever it might be. You definitely have to bring that tikanga experience to the panel. But the very reason the councillors and the RPC aren't going to be in there is so that we have independence. You don't then go around the back door of that and put all those that we'd like to be on there. You defeat the purpose in doing so. So I personally think 3. If we're going to have it independent, let's make it independent. The voice of Hawke's Bay or the rohe more generally comes through the submissions. And provided the capacity of the panel to understand the tikanga concepts is coming in, and it's matched with expertise on what the word outstanding means and the water quality values, etc., you should get the very best decision making. Yeah, those are my views with respect, and the idea that we'd have 6, it was completely news to me, and I most strongly wouldn't support that.
We didn't, Mr. Chairman, really speak on 6. Council wanted your 3, and it was no. This is our 3, and if you only want 3, good, they'll be ours. That's how the discussion partly went. It's ours or yours, if we're not going to sit down and have a decent talk. Now, it's probably remiss of me, I haven't bothered saying it, but I put in the submission on the Hastings wastewater. I penned it, printed it in ink, and that cost Hastings 30 million. I got a hearing out of it. They did go over to England and to Spain to sort that out. I shifted Napier's whole view and got what's there. That was my submission put through. Pen pack, I sat on that committee, on that hearing, on the mussel farm. So I have done a lot in the early stages. And boy, when you see a selection that's been stacked, it's easy to see. These have come from all over the Motu, while home is still in a mess. And with all our brain and everything here, it's still in a mess. It's in the paper today. You should have read it all. How did things like that happen? So we need a bit more home kainga going. And to Tanya, sorry about what was said. It was said after the meeting had shut that we really wanted her in as a trainee because of exactly what she said. How can you learn to be a commissioner if you're never put at the table as a trainee? So that the numbers would be down a little. So that's where we're sitting, guys. That's where it's sitting. We can't be ruled constantly by the back bench. And I'm referring to the back bench.
Okay.
So who are your 3 that you wanted?
Oh, they were put up.
Yeah, just tell me again.
Liz got them.
They've been mentioned in the meeting.
So we were saying Dr. Marker, Tania Huata, and I think I was wrong.
Christine.
Christine Scott.
I worked with Christine on several of those hearings, and also Winston's, the taking of the shingle. You will notice that each time I've been on a hearing, there has been some movements.
So they're your 3, Tanya, Roger and Christine. They were the 3. If you're down to 3, that's your 3.
That was the choice.
But Mr. Chair, have we agreed on 3?
Yeah,
Have we formally agreed on that?
Well,
And then how many
we
reserves?
didn't take a vote because I was just testing everyone's.
Chair, just perhaps as an additional piece of context, so if anyone hadn't done the calculation, we're talking an estimated 320 hours per individual, depending on their skill set. We're looking for 2 additionals between $60,000 and $120,000 roughly. So like I'd say approaching $100,000 will be likely the cost of having 2 additional commissioners, which will come from our planning team's budget.
Can we get a consensus that we're going for 3? Peter, you're 3?
It doesn't worry me, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing what came out of the meeting.
Yeah.
There are other ways that we can fix things, and that's always the Environment Court. Because we have our own special piece of legislation that permits us to go to the Environment Court after the hearing. And I would say quite a few in here have not read our Settlement Act. And I've mentioned that I don't know how many times. Read our Settlement Act, and then you might see something in there.
So I think we have pretty much a consensus on 3.
I think we have.
3, and we have the 3 proposals from Tangata Whenua. We have the 3 proposals from our staff, and we have some other people that have got other names in here of people that they know. Okay, so where to from here?
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, was Greg Ryder being suggested for the 3 or the reserve 3?
I've suggested Greg Ryder. I'm going to pull back on that now. You're quite right. He's all resource consents, not plan changes. So I'm happy to
pull back
on that. I did think Rodu Kitikiti had more experience than Rawiri.
Liz Palmer?
Yeah, and probably Liz. I thought Rodu was probably the preferred for me than Rawiri or Liz. I'm not going to die in the ditch over it, but I thought looking at his CV, he had the better, stronger benefit of tikanga and plan change and planning experience.
I was going to suggest Mr. Farnsworth for the reserves, not for this top 2.
That's right.
Mr. Chair, we're still missing one piece. We're asking can Tanya sit in on the hearings as a trainee? Otherwise, how can we move ahead?
She's going for her as a commissioner.
I have a suggestion on that. The hearings panel is yet to be appointed for the Wairoa outfall consent. And as chair of the hearings panel, the hearings committee, I would very much welcome and embrace recommendations from this committee for that very purpose. But picking up on Mike's comment, I would have thought a discrete resource consent proposal, particularly given the issues in that case, would be a better way to gain greater comfort and get those runs on the board of experience. So that's just a suggestion, then
Not a bad suggestion.
But I think that didn't resolve. That's going to hearing now, isn't it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not 100% confirmed, but more than likely. We're still having pre-hearing meetings, Wairoa District Council are still having pre-hearing meetings with the various submitters in the hope of not having to go to hearing, but in our view, staff view, I think the odds are on a hearing.
How does that sit with you, Peter?
I only sat in on ours, and so I know what's happening, so I can report. Because for me, our fight in Maridim is coming later, because I can't see any movement in here.
Oh no, that's not true. Everyone's just thinking about what you've suggested, and I'm writing things on paper. You know, there's.
No, I didn't mean it that way, Mr. Chairman. If it doesn't go right, we get in a good lot of commissioners from the South Island. They make rulings. You can guarantee we'll be in the Environment Court. Guarantee it. And if we're talking of money, we can guarantee we'll be there. Our Act of Parliament permits us to. We've been invited to do it, to clean up the environment. That's from some of the ministers.
If I might, through you, Chair, just remind the committee that the names there on the left-hand page were nominees from Tangata Whenua. So we've gone out to iwi authorities and asked them to put forward a nominee or two in some instances. So that's where that shortlist has come from.
So which names?
So on your page
Page
number
what?
6 of your paper,
The big table.
so you can see that in the
Left-hand column.
third, yeah,
Oh, it says nominee.
in the third column there, it will indicate whether or not that commissioner was nominated by an iwi authority. And 2 of the staff recommended commissioners were actually nominated, the first being Dr. Roger Marker, who was nominated by Mana Ahuriri and Te Kotahitanga o Te Wharetoa, and Glenys Payne was nominated by Mangaharuru Tangitu Trust.
Can I just ask of the staff, if we've come to a point where we'll decide on choosing 3, and I see that Dr. Roger Marker and Christine Scott seems like there's consensus for those 2, that we really only have to decide on one more, given that Tanya Huata may have an opportunity on a different type of hearing removed from the outstanding water bodies. What would the staff recommend in terms of filling the experience gap of that 3rd panellist? And then maybe we could try and agree on that 3rd panellist.
Just following that, I 100% agree with anyway. If we put, we've got Roger and Christine, we definitely have consensus around that, and they're both very capable people and local, and I'm quite keen on that. But then if we have one independent and we have the 3 reserves and Tania is on the reserves with 2 other people, could we agree to that?
Mr. Chair, I think that's a great way. I just, with respect, we've had a presentation by one of the people who has been nominated here, and none of the others have been able to do that. And I can see you finding a way through, or looking for a way through. I think you've kind of summed it up pretty well. Can I just ask a real practical question, because maybe we're just getting stuck in some knots here. How often do we see the reserves being pulled up? I know you can't predict the future, but is it a common occurrence? Or is it, are we really talking about a really hypothetical situation here?
It's, in my experience with the ones that I've been involved in, it's not a common experience. But just in the environment that we're finding ourselves in with COVID, if someone gets sick, or we did contact all these people back in March, maybe circumstances have changed, it is a lot easier to have a pool to go back to. But I think it's probably unlikely. I think it's the people that get chosen here that will be the commissioners for the Change 7 hearings.
I take comfort from that, actually, with your experience and that, with respect to COVID and things.
So which were the commissioners that aren't available that were in the original list?
Crossed out ones.
The crossed out.
So
Kevin
Glenys Payne's out.
Right.
No.
No.
Oh, from the chair's
Page
suggestion, you
6.
mean?
Yeah, on page 6 of the
Oh, okay,
agenda
yeah,
item.
and that, yeah, right. So
Table 2.
Glenys Payne's still available. Right. Okay, so it's the ones that are crossed out in that table, not in the alternative recommendation.
Correct.
Yeah, well, he's good.
Can we have some recommendations from the staff, please, on a 3rd panellist?
From all the CVs I've looked through, Dr. Brent Cowie has really great experience. He is also a chair, although it sounds like Christine would be appointed chair. He has experience, even though it's not set out in tikanga Māori, and identifying outstanding water bodies, has been involved in some WCO hearings. So I'd be recommending Dr. Brent Cowie for that position.
So if we had Roger, Christine Scott and Brent as our three, you could live with that.
Yes.
And the chair, Mr. Rex, the chair being...
Roger. No, Christine or Brent, isn't it? They're both.
Is that the consensus?
You could choose either.
You could choose either.
A recommendation.
what they do.
Feel free to suggest.
Well, no, I think it would be good for the RPC to choose.
Well, Brent's an independent, and an independent chair would be quite good, wouldn't it?
Okay.
So, Chairman, do I understand that if we might have consensus here at Dr. Brent Cowie as chair with Christine Scott and Roger Marker as the three?
Yeah.
And then we'd need to go on and consider the
I don't think we do, actually.
Sorry?
I don't think we do have consensus on that.
You don't think we do?
Okay.
No,
Okay.
because it's at odds to the other selection.
The other paper, you mean?
Sorry?
Well, who doesn't agree with
No,
that?
well, as I understand it, if that is the three that's being suggested, with Tanya being placed in the reserves, then I think we'd be comfortable with that, Peter.
Yeah, but it's just this top three at the moment.
Top three first.
Yeah.
If we do those top three, can you agree with those top three, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm just mindful that, yes, some of them were nominated by iwi reps.
Roger and Christine were. Christine was...
No, Christine wasn't.
No, she came from the RPC though.
Oh, okay.
The RPC
Yeah.
signed off on
Yeah,
Christine.
we did, sorry,
First
thank you. Sorry, I didn't make myself clear there. Yeah.
So she wasn't nominated, but the RPC, she was their top three preference. So two of these are Tana Whenua RPC.
Nominations.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Liz, Peter, thank you for advocating for me. Wish I was there. I just have a question to ask our specialist people. These people that you're putting forward, how many of them have represented Kahununu, our area, and our environmental issues are doing great?
Christine and Roger, both,
Christine and
especially
Roger.
Christine.
Yeah.
They've got no idea how much work she has done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's before
I agree with
we
that.
had commissioners.
Chris-
Ern von Dadelson, two of the greatest.
Okay, so we've got Christine
And Roger.
and Roger,
No, they're all friends apparently.
and the other person, have we had any environmental issues? I'm grateful that I'm in the picture. I'm just disappointed that I'm on reserve. But I just want to say, there's going to be up and coming, there's going to be more people like me that are going to put their hands up. But it's just hurtful that we're getting pushed back. So I want to know the next person that you've chosen, it's not what experience they have, it's what have they done to help our environmental issues.
Well, he's got quite an extensive list, Tanya. He seems to be a very experienced person. You would have read because you are privy to the information.
Yeah.
And he certainly, I don't know him, I don't know anyone around here knows him that well, but he reads really well, and having an independent person there is probably quite important to us, especially as the chair. And I understand that, you're disappointed, but
Yeah.
Martin had quite a nice suggestion that we, when the Waira one comes up, which is likely to come up, you're actually a very good candidate to go on that, which is probably a better learning one than this.
If you're talking about a fresh piece of paper and that's got the qualifications, I would have supported Mark Farnsworth. Just because he's Pākehā doesn't mean he doesn't have tikanga.
Mr. Chairman, can we just get some clarity around speaking rights on this table? We are hearing from one of the candidates, as Councillor Foss pointed out, and the more I'm hearing, the more concerned I'm getting about.
And I think we'll move on.
I feel uncomfortable about it too.
Yeah. We have the three, and I think we do have consensus on our top three. Can we just have a show of hands on our top three?
Could you?
Can you just
The
repeat
names,
them?
please.
Roger, Christine and Dr. Brent.
And Cowie.
Thank you, Peter.
Is that unanimous?
Yeah.
So
I
then-
can't see on the
we
screen.
need to see on the
On
screen.
the screen, check the screen out. Nikki, are you happy with that? Wirel's consumed her.
I have no choice.
Oh, I don't think.
I support.
There's a
I
conflict.
support those three for the top.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay, I think, Tanya, you need to stand down on that vote, actually. You have a serious conflict.
Probably.
So we'll have you as an
Aroha mai, sorry.
Okay, so the next three suggestions on the reserves.
Just so scared.
No.
Well, I would have thought Glenys Payne.
Yep.
Got her, yep.
Liz Palmer.
Liz
Is Palmer?
and Tanya,
Mark Farnsworth.
Mark Farnsworth.
Oh, my Farnsworth, yeah.
Rodu Kitty Kitty.
Oh, Rawari.
Oh.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We only want 3. We're going to let that down.
So just going back to the reserves, we just want to make sure that if our top 3, one pulls out, we can replace them with someone with the adequate experience or the same level of experience. So based on that, staff, those 5 that were mentioned, do you have 3 in mind to replace the top 3?
Can I, sorry, just confirm, did you say Rodu Kirikiri or Rawiri Faulkner?
Rodu Kitty Kitty would be my preference, just on pure objective looking at experience. And no disrespect again to Rawiri, it's just looking at the experience as a commissioner on these types of issues, that's all.
So just to confirm, so we had Glenys Payne, Rodu Kirikiri, Mark Farnsworth, Tanya
Liz
Huata
and
and Liz
Tanya.
Palmer.
There's no reason why you could not appoint 5 to have there as reserve commissioners.
There's no cost.
There's no
That's
cost.
yes, going to say to it, Sarah. Okay.
Well, then why don't we do that?
Who makes,
We have-
Who makes the call?
Who makes the call if one drops
called
out?
up.
Well, it depends whether they're a flanker or a hooker.
Yeah, exactly, or a halfback.
So, okay, are we happy with that? We have, what's on the table is that we have 5, and if one drops out, James makes the call.
James makes the call?
That's what we have asked in the paper.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Authority
Okay.
could be
I'll
delegated.
second that, Mr Chair.
Righto.
That's reasonable. Thank you.
Mike will move it, you'll second it. All those in favour of that?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much, team. That was.
That's the front and the back bench working together, eh?
That was a very, we got through, but by crikey, we got through, we talked it through.
There's one more recommendation to whether the RPC would like the panel to hear and issue decisions, or whether the RPC would like to, I'll just get back to that slide. So there's 2 options. You can delegate authority to the hearings panel to hear and issue decisions, and that means that they go out straight away. It has quite a few benefits in this case with Tank following so closely, because if there's no decisions issued, then they don't have that much weight during the Tank hearings. But then that doesn't mean that the recommendations of the panel don't come back via the RPC to then adopt and put out officially as decisions. And saying that when the recommendations do come back, there is only limited scope to amend them anyway. They can't be materially changed. So that's really the last decision to make.
So just my thoughts on that is we've picked these really sensible, good people, and I'm happy to live with their decisions rather than come back and re-litigate it all.
Well, that's a matter, Mr Chairman, it's a matter of natural justice, that's absolute best practice. They hear all the evidence, they hear all the submissions, we don't.
Is anyone going to contribute to that?
Yeah, I do, unfortunately. But it's because of the decision. I think it's the mana of the decision that gets confirmed by this committee. And I think we can all presume to have the same level of respect for the decisions as they come out, that we're unlikely to engage in changing the decisions. I think it's about just putting the stamp of this RPC.
As long as it's just a
committee.
stamp, we
Well,
don't relitigate everything.
No, I take your point, I understand that.
Mr Chair, I tend to follow you, sorry, Mr Co-Chair, your recommendation there, but actually what's back in mind, because I actually absolutely respect what you just said there, Madam Chair, is the big think tank and trying to give that as much free air as possible, unencumbered by something else. I think that's huge for all of us, and maybe there's a way to inform this committee a bit more than just, you know, a noting or something from the commissioners, perhaps. Is there some way to inform this committee better, rather than giving this committee suddenly a chance to relitigate something which could be picked up to disrupt or taint the process of tank, which everyone is so invested in. So, Mr Chair, I fully endorse what you were saying there, but trying to find a way to form it, which appreciates the takes into account the standing of this committee, which is not a rubber stamp, but in this instance, an informed approval or something.
But Mr Chairman, on page 7, 33, paragraph 33, it says the contrary. That's from the staff, I think.
What does it say?
Well, it says it can be appealed. Either way it can be appealed to the Environment Court.
Yeah, submitters.
That's right, it's up
The
there
right
on the
to
bottom
appeal.
of the slide, so once decisions are issued, anyone can appeal it to the Environment Court.
Anyone, so
That's right.
Paragraph 33?
Well, I guess that's just right of justice, isn't it? Right of appeal.
There's still rights of appeal to the Environment Court, that's just what the Act provides at the moment.
I've just asked Mr Chair if we could clarify whether the terms of reference of the RPC require the decision to come back.
Annalee, do you have
the RPC terms of reference here?
I can look it up quickly.
It's just notification.
Council resources.
Yeah. On the agenda. They've got a replay for you.
I understand.
What's the question, Liz?
So Martin, your thoughts on this?
Yeah,
Is
I mean-
same as mine, I guess, is it?
There are some unusual statutory cases where councils get to reject hearing panel recommendations. They are in the Auckland Unitary Plan context and under the new freshwater management regime, but that then triggers a full right of appeal. For that very reason, as a matter of natural justice, I'm absolutely clear in my mind that if we delegate and give these guys the, you know, the mana and the gravitas of this role, they need to make the call. And looking at the terms of reference, Mr Chair, this panel or this committee is responsible for preparing these instruments that are then notified, and there's a number of other work steps there at the initial stages, but at that point it then is released into the RMA process, so it doesn't come back to us.
That would be my thought. Is that correct?
that's correct. We go straight to the court. That's what
Well,
I'm trying to explain.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's
Be
your choice.
careful.
Yeah, that's a
Be
choice.
careful.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
have
yeah.
an equal discussion.
If
and not
these
contentious.
people come up with a decision that someone doesn't like, they can go to court if they want.
Yeah.
Does that
And
require?
that's fine. That's good.
Unfortunately, Mr Chairman, because of our settlement, those are on the top of the committee have got to carry out the wishes of our membership. Thousands of them. So that's really a nightmare for some of us.
Yeah, I get that. So,
That's okay.
You okay with that, Dana?
I've got my point clarified about the terms of reference. I think that's fine.
So what are the options here? We're saying that they are going to make the decisions. We've appointed these people, they are going to make decisions.
So, yeah, it's recommendation 2.4, delegate authority to the Change 7 hearing panel to hear and issue decisions on the council's behalf.
Yes, and that is 4.15 of the terms of
So
reference.
I'm proposing, I'll put that proposal that we follow that process. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Anyone will second it? Peter was going to second. I should have had him. I've got you now anyway. Do you wish to speak to that?
No, that makes total sense to me, so absolutely.
I don't wish to speak. Does anyone else wish to speak to that?
I just want to say, Mr. Chair, let's not undervalue the relationship that we're trying to develop between the Pākehā here.
No, I'm sure we're not.
And we will continue to promote a treaty approach to these types of decisions because we're obliged to. And at some point, expediency won't necessarily carry the day. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Liz. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously.
Just as well I came in today, didn't
There's one more recommendation.
What's the other one?
Number 3, and that essentially is just delegating authority to James or one of us to just undertake the necessary arrangements to prepare the hearing panel, engage them, contracts.
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Liz moves. Sheriff will second that.
Okay.
Do you wish
Give
to
the
speak
weighty
to
ones
that?
to me, aren't you, today?
Me?
No, no.
Speak no. Anyone else wish to speak to that motion? Yeah, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Any more?
That's it, I promise. No more.
Right, thank you very much. That was a really successful and good open debate. Thank you very much, everybody. And really important for our region. Okay, we have item 5, verbal update on the Tukituki plan change 6. Who's going to do that, Liz?
Liz and Kerry, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. Back in June, at your early June, at your regional planning committee meeting, you agreed that you approved a potential plan change, a change to the land use capability table in plan change in the Tukituki, to be forwarded to the Minister of the Environment for a streamlined planning process. And the idea of just changing that table was to allow us and those landowners in the Tukituki catchment who need to get land use consent to be able to reference an updated version of the table, because the version that table was based on, the overseer version that table was based on, is no longer even physically available to anyone to use. So in your recommendation, you said that we should forward it to the Minister of the Environment, and sort of gave us a deadline of 15th of July, which was last week, to get a response. So Kerry and her team very promptly prepared streamlined planning process application, and it went to the Minister. Now, we haven't yet had a formal reply, but we have had an indication that the process will not be approved by them. And that is mainly because in the meantime, the Resource Management Amendment Act has come in, and there's some different provisions that relate to plan changes for that. And so that was really the sole reason that we've been given as an indication that they're not going to proceed. That actual legislation came into effect on July the 1st, so we really were caught in the middle there. So until we get the formal notification, we're just working internally on what can we do, and we will have to come back to you formally as a regional planning committee, I think, for our next steps. And obviously part of our key next steps is around our communications to the landowners in the Tukituki catchment, around how we're going to be able to, they're going to be able to progress their required resource consent applications. The whole of the Tukituki plan's due to be reviewed by 2024. That's another part of the changes that are coming out of central government, and work will be underway in due course. So there's a possibility that we may park the change to the table and work in other ways to work with the landowners to achieve our nitrogen reducing activities. So that's really just an update, and that's, as I said, we can't do anything until we have formally received their decision, and we haven't yet. We'd hoped to, obviously, for this meeting, but it hasn't happened.
Thank you, Liz. Is there any questions for Liz, Martin?
So, am I right to understand that if we were to notify that plan change, the Minister's thinking is that would be under the new freshwater planning process?
That's right. Yes, it is. Yeah, and it's
the land use. I know it's connected to freshwater, but that's interesting that that's where that would go to.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be the first schedule. It would be this new.
It would be the new freshwater planning process, which is semi-streamlined, but does require the appointment of an independent panel, and I guess that there's no constraints around the scope of what they may decide or recommend. But there's a potential to open up more of the plan for debate than perhaps we're ready for.
I see.
Any more questions for us?
I was going to ask that actually.
So thank you, Liz, for that verbal update. I think we'll just have someone just to so that we have received it. Charlie, we just received it.
Yes.
Anyone, will you second that? Thank you. All those in favour of receiving that verbal update from Liz? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Liz. And that is the end of our meeting today. Unless we have anything else on the agenda, do you want to slip in, James? Therefore, Kitty will ask you to close our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Charlie.
We love your nieces.
Yeah.
Another one. She won't give us another one until we've learnt this one. But let me go through it again, and I'll go through it slowly. Pūrākau, which is like a grove of trees. Te ara I whanatu aira, pūrākau e tū mai nei, e pikikirunga kia marama aha, kairaro ko te mata. Te whakatika ngā ke kirunga rā, ka titi whā te rehutai. Te ara I whanatu aira. Ko te kura ki ahau, hei tohu noa ke ki te kura I te rehutai. Te whakawhiti o te rā, te whakaai o whenua, hoki muri mai au ki te iwi, te ara I whanatu aira. On the path most travelled, behold the grove of trees. I ascend so that I may see clearly. Below is te matawa maui. And as I arise to go forth, a light shines through the sea spray. Upon the path of the myriads, I retain this plume as a symbol of the legacy beyond the spray of the sea, causing the sun to shine and spreading peace over the land. I now return to the people upon the trodden path. Kia ora tata.
It's even nicer listening to the real.